Hi, you're watching Gravitas. I'm Sana Khan. Tonight, we pick up yet another set of stories and talk about them with a power-packed lineup of guests. India gets ready to test its intercontinental ballistic missile, its most capable, most advanced missile with a range that can strike targets as far as northern China. That's the first story. We'll try and get you reactions from Beijing on this one later on the show. We also talk about the tectonic shift taking place as far as long-standing ties between India and Russia go. Why is it that Moscow has decided to pursue and strengthen ties with Islamabad? And at 9:30 p.m., we talk about the concerns around payments made through e-wallets in India and their efficacy in the country. But first, we talk about the ICBM in context with China. In the next few weeks, India is expected to test fly the Agni-5, a 5,000-kilometer range intercontinental ballistic missile to its full distance. It will be the fourth and, if successful, final test before user trials begin. WION's Ramesh Ramachandran has more.
India has signalled its intent to conduct the fourth and last test of the nuclear-capable Agni-5 missile. The final test will pave the way for user trials and eventual induction into India's strategic arsenal. Experts say the Agni-5, when inducted, will not only enhance India's strategic deterrence, but also contribute to strategic stability in Asia. Why? Because India and China, which have fought one war, compete with each other for influence in the region and beyond. China opposes India's bid to become a member of the nuclear suppliers group, the prospects of which are fading by the day.
We need capability that engulfs our entire strategic concerns. And those strategic concerns are related to two nuclear neighbors.
But is Agni-5 enough to deter adversaries? Brigadier Sehgal says it's not so much a question of numbers of missiles a country possesses as their reach, which is more consequential for strategic deterrence.
Numbers don't matter. As long as you have the capability of hitting 4, 5, 6 major targets in China, for example, then by and large you have a credible minimum strategic deterrence in place.
In contrast, Rajagopalan has a more nuanced take on the issue.
We are stepping up our capabilities in a way to deter China from enter into some sort of adventurism in a sense. But does that mean that we are fully capable? No, we are not yet. And our triad, for instance, the nuclear triad that we talk about, our naval capabilities are not exactly where it should be. We are on the right path, but I think it will take some time before we actually mature some of these capabilities to have an effective deterrent mechanism against China.
But it's not just India's technological prowess that will be on display. The timing of the proposed test is equally significant, coming as it does as the US transitions to a Trump presidency. India's strategic arsenal may be modest as compared to China, but the Indian government estimates that the Agni-5, when inducted, will be sufficient to meet existing threat perceptions. In New Delhi, Ramesh Ramachandran, WION.
All right. In fact, joining me right now on the phone line is Mr. Atul Aneja. He's a China correspondent for The Hindu, India's leading publication. Joining me over the phone line from Beijing. Thanks so much, Mr. Aneja, for joining us here on WION. My first question to you is, I'm sure there must be media reports here in India, and not one that doesn't mention the range and the fact that it can hit northern China. Any reactions at your end?
You see, there's no, since these are news reports which have come out, there is no reaction either in the Chinese media or from the government side, as expected. Once the test takes place, of course, there will be a formal reaction to this. Yes, it's very clear that with the range of this ICBM, though it's not the full range of ICBM, which starts from 5,000 kilometers onwards, 5,500 to 8 to 11,000 kilometers. So it's the earliest, let's say the first version of the ICBM, which India is likely to test. It's from the range, it's clear that it is meant to be a deterrent towards China. But to your question, whether there has been a response from the Chinese side as yet, either officially or unofficially, no. There's nothing which has come out from it.
Also, Mr. Reneja, talking about India's nuclear capability with respect to the Agni 5, do you think that China would, even if India, let's say late in December, early in January, goes ahead and tests this, which it is planning to, does China even see India as a security threat in that sense due to, the technology gap or maybe, the no war bottom line that India takes?
You see, there's no particular, the Chinese will definitely take note of this. It does stabilize the Indian deterrent. As one of your earlier speakers has mentioned, that Indian deterrent has not fully matured as of now. Agni 5 is an advance from where we were earlier. But, on the nuclear side, we're not. On the naval side, we are not there. We don't have a strategic bomber as of now. Of course, the Chinese will take note of it, but they are not going to break into a sweat on this development. Response possibly from the military side, ballistic missile defenses, that's usually the response to that. Chinese have got S-400 from the Russians. Now, I don't think they're going to make many modifications. The idea would be to watch India more carefully. Of course, the credence of the Indian deterrence increases incrementally, which will be taken note of by the Chinese side. But it will be circumspect. There's not going to be, I don't expect a big response either from the official side or on the ground in a military sense.
But India's status, being not being a signatory of the NPT, being an unofficial nuclear weapon state, do you not think after this test, perhaps it's going to start raising questions as far as India's role in the region is concerned? Because perhaps China would know that there's a huge gap between the capabilities that Beijing has and the capabilities that New Delhi has and is building up. But, in the future, maybe looking at a more aggressive stance on India's part, wouldn't China begin to start being wary or not? What is your opinion?
Look, not just by this test. This is, as I said, is an incremental advance. But let's say if the Arihant comes in, you have a full-fledged nuclear submarine and submarine launched ballistic missiles on that. Now, those will be issues which China is bound to take note of. In a very concrete way, but not just the Agni 5, which will be tested in a few days' time, or is expected to be tested. So it will be wait and watch right now, but they will be very wary. They'll be keeping a hawk eye on India, that's for sure. But I don't see that changing the strategic balance in Asia. I think that's stretching it a bit right now.
Okay.
We are still on the learning curve on developing a nuclear triad.
All right. And also, what do you have to say about the timing in the report? Ramesh mentioned about the timing, Trump taking over soon as the next president, and also, China's stance on India's bid for the NSG. What do you have to say about the timing of this test that India is now, gearing up to conduct?
No, I don't see a connection with that, this influencing the NSG debate at all, because there are other factors. I think it's the Pakistan factor which comes into play. There are the dynamic of the NSG is different. You can't conflate the Agni test with that. Regarding the other change which is taking place, that's a big if. That is a change which is taking place in the United States. What kind of response will the Americans have? And that is what will be the nature of the U.S.-India equation. Are we going to get closer on a military side if Trump comes in, which I very much doubt, or not? So those geopolitical equations will count very much. If the U.S. and India comes closer, then of course the Chinese are going to sit up and take notice of that. But if Trump pursues an isolationist path generally, and the pivot towards Asia, which is basically a containment strategy towards China,
right,
that in a way loosens. In that case, I don't see the Chinese taking, having much concern about India's individual independent arsenal.
All right, Mr. Atul Aneja, thanks so much for joining us here this evening on WION and sharing your thoughts with our viewers. With that, we wrap up this discussion and move on to Russia and India, who have been allies for decades now. Moscow and New Delhi have supported one another on the international diplomatic sphere. They've signed lucrative military deals and deepened economic ties. But today, New Delhi and Moscow do not share the same relationship as they used to. It's been made clear on several occasions this year alone, but why? The question is that would Russia lose interest in its seemingly perfect long-time ally? Why this need all of a sudden to warm up to Pakistan? Pakistan, which is Russia's Cold War rival and India's biggest historical enemy. We talk about that in just a bit. Joining me right now, we'll have our guests. But first, let's take a quick look at this report about ties between India and Russia.
Russia has always been seen as India's best friend and ally. But the BRICS summit in Goa earlier this year suggested strains in the relationship. Russia did not support India's move to name the terror group Jaish-e-Mohammed in the declaration. Later, at the Heart of Asia summit in November in Amritsar, Russia upbraided India for targeting Pakistan. Pundits say Russia is moving closer to China to make up for its isolation from the West. It is also shaking hands with Pakistan for reasons less to do with India and more about its security concerns in Central Asia. But yes, India being designated as America's major defense partner has upset Moscow. India is buying light artillery guns from the US, and US firms are lining up to set up a fighter aircraft production line in India. Delhi's decision to diversify arms procurement has undermined what is seen as the pillar of the relationship. Even if Russia does end up selling arms to Pakistan, Moscow knows India has deeper pockets. India also knows only Russia will provide strategic weapons platforms and systems. Reports say Russia has agreed to lease a second nuclear attack submarine to India after the Chakra. Russia has helped India's indigenous nuclear submarine program. The BrahMos joint venture builds the world's fastest cruise missile. India's sole operational aircraft carrier, INS Vikramaditya, is Russian-built. India has signed a clutch of agreements over the last month with Russia, which includes the S-400 missile defense system and local assembly of the Kamov helicopter. But the future is in Kudankulam, Tamil Nadu, where the first nuclear power reactor built by Russia is generating electricity. 18 such reactors are planned, and with oil deals on the horizon, India and Russia appear set to fill a vital gap in their trade basket. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, tonight we have talking heads from India, Pakistan and Moscow. First up, Nandan Unnikrishnan, Senior Fellow from the Observer Research Foundation, joins us live. Thank you, sir, so much for joining us. From Moscow, we'll be joined in shortly by Mr. Petr Topichkanov. He's a Senior Researcher and Associate of the Carnegie Moscow Center. But right now, we're also joined in by Mr. Umair Jamal, Senior Journalist from Pakistan. Thanks, all of you, for joining us. For the moment, let me first come to you, Mr. Unnikrishnan. If I can start by asking you the status of India and Russia, the ties. Do you think the two are actually gravitating away from each other at this point?
Firstly, I'd like to thank you for having me on the show. And to answer your question, I don't think they're gravitating away from each other. But yes, there are some tensions in the relationship. And definitely there are question marks over Russia's overtures to Pakistan. And India is concerned about it. But I think some of these questions have been addressed during the Goa summit. And at this point of time, I would say that we are satisfied, but does not mean that we are extremely happy with the situation as it exists.
But let me come in, Mr. Unnikrishnan. I heard your point, but there, if you talk about Goa at the BRICS, Russia refused to actually support India in its claims that Pakistan sponsored terrorism. So there we saw again Russia, sticking it out with Pakistan rather than, supporting India at that particular point in time, where it was absolutely justified in what they'd said at that point. We're right after, facing terrorist attacks.
Well, it's sad that you follow newspaper reports rather than what actually is reported even by your own correspondents. If you watch the press conference which was conducted by Modi and Putin, Prime Minister Modi spoke about terrorism, and President Putin sat next to him and did not voice one iota of a difference, right? So point number one. Point number two if India was delusional that it would be able to get Pakistan named in a BRICS summit declaration, that is what it is. It's a delusion. And if you expect Russia to join that delusion, that I think is unfortunate. So we are very clear that on terrorism, I don't think Russia has a different opinion from us. But the issue is that Russia views Pakistan through the prism of Afghanistan, and it believes that it cannot have a stable solution to the situation in Afghanistan without Pakistan. So while Pakistan may be part of the problem, it also has to be part of the solution. So therefore, it needs to build a certain amount of leverage in Islamabad to develop leverage that will allow it to believe that Islamabad is capable of taking Russia's concerns on board and reflecting them when a solution in Afghanistan is being negotiated. However, the point is that this is a two-way street.
Right.
So it's not as if Islamabad is going to make concessions to Russia without concessions from Russia to Islamabad. And that is what worries India.
Right. In a sense, you know, we could talk about Russia reevaluating ties with Pakistan, but let me quickly first go across to Mr. Jamal, joining me from Lahore at this point in time. Mr. Jamal, then what would you say? How important are Pakistan's ties with Russia?
Thank you very much for having me. I agree on most parts. I agree with my colleague. If you see, Pakistan and Russia's relations have grown steadily in last couple of years, but they are at a very basic stage. You see, there have been some movement. We see there are talks about Pakistan in negotiation with Moscow to buy Mi-35 helicopters, and there was some military exchanges as well in last couple of years and joint exercises. But these are, I think these are very common things, and Pakistan may be interested in developing all these relations and as quick as Pakistan could be. But I think Russia is not as interested as Islamabad is, because there are so many complications. I agree with my colleague again. Russia is looking toward Islamabad from prism of Afghanistan, because instability in Afghanistan has a direct impact on South Russian security from Central Asian context, and then Islamic State has developed some foothold in Afghanistan. So I think Russia is more interested in a way forcing or some sort of leverage toward Islamabad, where it can, you know, somehow convince Pakistan that supporting all these groups in Afghanistan or elsewhere is not interest of Pakistan or any other country.
Right, Mr. Unnikrishnan, coming back to you, then where do you see India-Russia relationship going? Do you see that it's going to continue as far as military ties are concerned, as far as you know, energy cooperation is concerned, or do you see a steady decline in perhaps the years to come with the way, you know, things are headed?
Well, I don't think that you can view India-Russia relationship in isolation from what is happening in the rest of the world. It is not, right. It is not as if the India-Russia relationship is on planet Venus and the rest of us continue on this globe, you know, in other ways.
Of course.
So therefore, the impact of US-China relations, the impact of US-Russia relations, all these will have implications for the development of India-Russia relations. Having said that, I don't see any major problem erupting in our relationship with Russia over the next, let's say, 10 to 12 years. After all, we are committed to receiving several important strategic military platforms. We are also committed to developing civil nuclear energy together. So there are many Indian interests which are tied in with continued cooperation with Russia. And similarly, from the other side, Russian interests are tied in with developing a relationship with India. So I don't see any significant drift occurring in the next 10 to 12 years.
All right. On that note, please stay on with us. Let's take a look at this other report, which talks about how China is building bridges with Pakistan to hopefully influence the Taliban there. But the move also reflecting Moscow's sense that its national interests are better served by broadening its partners in this region. Take a look.
These pictures would have been unthinkable some years ago. Russian troops exercising with Pakistani troops. It happened in September in Pakistan. There's even talk of Russia supplying arms to Islamabad. The scenario of India's long-standing strategic ally hobnobbing with bitter enemy Pakistan has been received with some disquiet in South Bloc. But Russia has its reasons. Islamabad is a key player in Afghanistan because of its close ties to Taliban. The Taliban is seen in Moscow as less of a threat to its Central Asian allies than the Islamic State. This is based on assurances held out by the Taliban and also by the feedback given through Pakistan. The move reflects a wider debate within the Russian Foreign Ministry about building bridges with Pakistan, and it's likely to impact India. Old India hands, like their ambassador in Delhi, Alexander Kadakin, remain solid on India, at least in public. But there is also a sense that Russia needs to explore Pakistan's potential, whether in terms of getting access to the Taliban and hopefully influencing its conduct, or using that connect to leverage its more profitable India Connect. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, at this point, I'd like to come to you, Mr. Umair Jamal. Do you think Pakistan has slowly now started to realize, it's reevaluate ties in a sense with the US and Saudi Arabia and started looking towards Russia as somebody who's going to give it more independence in a sense because of its interest in the region as well? It's like a two-way street, like Mr. Unnikrishnan also mentioned a short while ago.
Yes, I think to some extent, and I think Pakistan for some time has looked to diversify its foreign policy from that prism. The relation with Pakistan, it has been very demanding for Pakistan, and Pakistan depended for a long time has been by much has been on Washington, and after that it's have been on Beijing, and the addition of Moscow in this regard as to Pakistan's that Pakistan can go and boast about this relationship. But I don't think Russia is that much interested in going into relationship, as or deepening it, because there are complications, as you mentioned before, and my colleague mentioned before. India's relationship with Moscow is very important in this regard. I think New Delhi won't appreciate if Moscow signs any military deal or any economic deal. And in this regard, these exercises which were held months ago, they were quite irritation. The irritation has developed in last months, and there have been very constant talks in this regard.
Right, Mr. Umair Jamal, there seems to be a slight problem in the Skype connection. Maybe it's better in just a few minutes. But till then, let me go back to Mr. Nandan Unnikrishnan, sir. Coming back to you, we are talking about India, Russia, China, of course, a lot in play over here. But if I can quote the Indian ambassador to Russia, Pankaj Swaran, what he said at the time of the BRICS summit, before the BRICS summit, he says that India's ties with Russia are likely to be affected if Moscow continues to expand military relations with Islamabad. And he criticized the ties between Russia and Pakistan. So there itself, there have been quite a number of indications from the Indian side saying there could be issues in the days to come. Do you see then Russia, China, Pakistan triangle, as many say it's going to be the new superpower axis in the region?
No, I beg to differ right now. I firstly don't think that a growing relationship with Pakistan is, at least in the immediate future, going to significantly affect the Indo-Russian relationship. As I said, there are independent reasons why India and Russia are invested in each other and why they were interested in continuing this close partnership. On the other hand, the international situation currently is such that the deterioration of relations between Russia and the West had pushed Russia somewhat towards China, and people see Russia's movement and developing closeness, if you want, with Pakistan as partly some kind of Chinese pressure on Moscow. While that may be true, but there are certain limitations to the relationship Russia has with either China or with Pakistan. Whether those limitations are overcome or not is something that we can discuss and debate in the coming years. But right now, I definitely do not believe that there is an axis of China, Pakistan, Russia emerging, because then I would like to know it's an axis against whom. And that, unfortunately, is a question I think the people who talk about this axis would not have an answer to.
Right. First of all, let's in fact quickly go back and listen to the soundbite wherein Pakistan and Russia have historically specifically talked about in context to Afghanistan. Let's listen to former ISI chief of Pakistan, Hamid Gul.
Russia has now come up with a very good friendly gesture that they are prepared to give us $5 million of aid, $500 million for our steel mill. America has never done any such thing for us. America has never given us any such package, bailout package. In fact, they block our ways.
All right, Mr. Jamal, the fact is that India too has deals with Russia right now, work in progress, be it the stealth frigates, be it the nuclear submarines. So also the S-400 Triumph surface-to-air missiles, a lot of military hardware deals that are going on at this point in time. Where do you see then, the ties between Russia and Islamabad, Moscow and Islamabad going forward from here on, from where they are at this point in the days to come, years to come?
Well, I don't see any credible movement as far as Russia's relation with Pakistan in military perspective is concerned. You see, this deal which everyone has talked about, Russia providing M35 helicopters to Pakistan, it has been going on for last 2.5 years. We have just seen that Pakistani delegation is going to Moscow, and there's someone coming from Moscow to Islamabad, and then there's an intervention from New Delhi, and then the discussion stops. And from last 2 or 3 months, there was a major news that an agreement has been signed in this regard, and then there's a complete pause. So I think Russia is very conscious that what New Delhi will think, because see this enduring relationship between New Delhi and Moscow. This is bigger than what Islamabad can hope from Moscow, and Moscow can hope from Islamabad. So I think Moscow is only and major interest in Islamabad is about its security, and if there is something else besides that, so I think that there will be some movement in economic terms, but not much in military.
All right, so you're denying these reports of Mi-35 helicopter gunships deal with Russia. No news of that, no confirmation of that. But, there are also reports that Pakistani and Russian officials met for the first time to discuss regional cooperation very recently in Islamabad, and they're going to take those talks forward in Moscow as well. That's all the time we have for the moment, but I'd like to thank you, Mr. Unni Krishnan, also Mr. Umair Jamal, for joining us and putting your thoughts in front of our viewers, sharing your perspective. We're taking a very short break. We'll be back. We're going to talk about at the back of demonetization, how using e-wallets can be a bad idea sometimes. Stay with us. We'll be back with more.